This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Hello and welcome back to the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Alex Masford. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode and to be continuing to listen to the show. If you are a returning listener, we really do appreciate you. I hope you all had a happy holiday. I hope you all had a good, New Year's, everything like that. We got a lot to talk about in today's episode. Before I start talking anything sports, I want to remind you all of a couple of things. First of all, please subscribe to the podcast if you haven't done so already. You can do it really easily, really quickly. Just go to the main page of our show, the GSMC Sports Podcast, and whatever you're listening to this on, Podbean, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and you'll see probably in the top right-hand corner-ish, or maybe even dead center, a little button that just has a plus sign next to it and also says subscribe. If you could hit that button for us, that would mean the absolute world to us. You want to subscribe to the podcast for a couple of reasons, but the main one being you want to get those alerts and those notifications on your phone, on your laptop, on your watch, on whatever device you might be listening to this on. And again, you'll get those alerts and notifications, and you'll know when we drop a new episode of the GSMC Sports Podcast. When we release it, you won't have to go look at Twitter or just go, check casually. You'll get those alerts whenever they are released, and then you can, be one of the first people to listen to a new episode again when we release it. So please, if you could subscribe to the podcast on our main page, whatever application or even website you're listening to this on, Spotify, Apple Music, Podbean, please subscribe to us on all those great platforms. We would really appreciate it. Again, please subscribe to the podcast. Also, don't forget to leave us a 5-star review or just a positive review in general if you are enjoying the content and discussion points of the show, the production, everything that goes on behind the scenes with our great team as well. So if you're just enjoying the show overall, we'd love it if you leave us a 5-star review or just a positive review in general on that same main page, on that same website or application. Again, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or Podbean. You can leave us a review. If you want to write something, you can do that as well, but as long as you just leave us a positive review or just a 5-star review, we would really appreciate that if you are enjoying the content of this show just in general. So again, please don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and leave us a positive review or just a 5-star review, in general, anything like that. And also, if you could give us a follow on all social media platforms, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram is where you can primarily follow us. Just overall, we would love to interact with you guys more on there. So if you follow us on all of those great social media platforms, again, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Over on social media, we can talk about sports. We can talk about, maybe some NFL playoff games, maybe whatever the main NBA game is on that night on TNT or ESPN. But just overall on social media, we can talk to you guys, again, about sports breaking news, about anything sports related that you guys want to talk about. Social media is the place to do that, especially in real time. Again, with the, landscape of the NFL and NBA always changing, player movement, games happening, trades, injuries, whatever it may be. Social media is the best way to find our immediate reaction, maybe, or something like that. So again, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram is where you can primarily follow us, and we would absolutely love it. In addition to subscribing to the podcast and leaving us that review, if you could follow us on all those great social media platforms. One more time, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. I hope wherever you are and however you may be listening, you and your family are happy, healthy during these extremely trying times in the world today. We have a fantastic show for you all today coming up later on in the episode. I want to give you my breakdown on the two hottest potentially teams in the NBA right now. One of them being the Miami Heat. After a slow start, they seem to be on the come up and the rebound. They are back, winning 5 straight games. They're back in the top half of the Eastern Conference. I want to talk about their win streak, the Celtics losing streak. How do they get out of their funk? And is Danny Ainge to blame for the Celtics struggles? And of course, the New York Knicks are 500 for the first time in a long time, and they're also in the top half of the Eastern Conference as well. I think they might actually even be the 5th seed right now. So we'll talk about the Knicks. Are they a legitimate Eastern Conference player or not, or is this sort of just a mirage in the early part of the season? The All-Star break is obviously coming up, so we're almost reaching the halfway point. And again, the Celtics and Heat, I want to talk about both of those two teams as well. That's coming up at the very end of the episode. Later on in the show as well, I want to talk some draft stuff, at least a quarterback conversation. Who is the best quarterback in this year's draft class? A lot of people have been talking about Trevor Lawrence, including myself, as a generational prospect. What about Zach Wilson? Do people like? Why are people talking about him so much? And also, we have a lot of great wide receivers in this draft class. I want to talk about them as well. Also, coming up later on in the show, two teams with aging quarterbacks, undecided about their future. Ben Roethlisberger, Drew Brees. I want to discuss both of those players' situations going forward as well. But of course, we're going to start off with probably what was the biggest piece of information over the past couple of days in the NFL world, and that's being, instead of the Deshaun Watson situation, actually another quarterback who potentially could want out, that being Russell Wilson, the quarterback of the Seattle Seahawks. So this story really went from nothing to something really quickly. It started off about a few weeks back when Russell Wilson was sort of doing a media tour during the Super Bowl, appearing on a lot of popular sports commentary shows like the Dan Patrick Show. I think he also did an interview with GQ. Also, I think he did an interview with his wife Sierra for a different magazine as well. And overall, he was voicing some displeasures about the amount of times he's been hit as a Seattle Seahawk. Not many players since at least the past 4 or 5 years have been hit more than Russell Wilson. Only some of the names that have been on that list are guys like Deshaun Watson and things like that. Guys who have been known to be able to take all of these hits and sort of persevere. So Russell Wilson is definitely one of the toughest guys in the NFL. And, he's turning 30, 31, reaching the second half of his career. He's obviously now past the establishment stage of his career. Everybody knows Russell Wilson's good. He's obviously won a Super Bowl before, should be in the MVP discussion each and every year. He pretty much has been, at least in my opinion, even though he's never received a vote. Yet he's in the second half of his career now where he wants to establish a legacy, figure out where he's going forward, how he's going to win more championships, how he's going to go down as maybe the greatest quarterback of all time or one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. And he's just questioning everything. I don't know if this situation is maybe as aggressive as the Deshaun Watson situation is. I think Deshaun Watson genuinely will never play for the Houston Texans ever again. I don't think he wants to put on that uniform ever again. We'll talk about it maybe later on in the show, but he sat down with ownership and told them, and the new head coach there as well, that he is not going to be playing for them this year, that he's willing to sit out, hold out, just get him traded to Miami, Carolina, the Jets, whoever it may be. It's not like that for Russell Wilson. In my opinion, here's what happened. Pete Carroll has been in Seattle forever. He was the head coach of USC, obviously, forever, a couple of other stops as well. But he was there before Russell Wilson. He was the head coach of the Seattle Seahawks before Russell Wilson. And then Russell Wilson comes along, and of course they've never had a losing season since he's been there, and it appears that maybe in the structural organization part of it from ownership down, Pete Carroll gets more credit for that winning culture and those championships maybe than Russell Wilson does. Pete Carroll has final say over personnel, and he's obviously the head coach as well. I think Russell Wilson, similar to Deshaun Watson, wanted or wants more say and how things go on a day-to-day basis with the organization he plays for. Not necessarily analytics or business or anything like that, but more of just roster construction, the draft process. Who are they looking at in free agency? Who are we looking at for a new head coach, a new offensive coordinator, no matter what it may be? Because again, at the end of the day, the quarterback is the face of the franchise. Russell Wilson is the face of the Seattle Seahawks. He gets paid the most money on the Seattle Seahawks because he answers all the questions to the media. He wears the captain on his chest, and he is that face of that franchise. He gets all of the blame when they lose, things like that. So when you have an organization that is searching for power, or there's power struggle issues, for example, in Philadelphia, I think there was a real power struggle between the general manager, Howie Roseman, and the head coach, Doug Peterson, which eventually led to Doug Peterson leaving because the owner, whoever it might be, trusted Howie Roseman more than he trusted Doug Peterson with day-to-day operations and of the team and things like that, and there was a rift there. I think we've reached that same rift with maybe the Houston Texans, that Cal McNair is siding with Jack Easterby over maybe the Houston Texans players, including Deshaun Watson, which is why Deshaun wants out. I think we're in the early stages of something like that in Seattle. There is a power struggle in Seattle. Russell Wilson wants to have more say in the offensive line people that he gets, and the coaches that he gets, probably the receivers, all of that. He wants more info on personnel, who his teammates are going to be, specifically on offense, and he wants to get hit less. He wants the team to be all in on him. I don't know if the Seattle Seahawks have ever truly been all in on Russell Wilson. We know that Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs are all in on each other. Patrick Mahomes has a 10-year contract with the Kansas City Chiefs, and the Chiefs each and every year are going to try to build the best roster possible to fit him, his play style, his success, and hopefully get him to the Super Bowl again each and every year. The Seattle Seahawks have never built around Russell Wilson. They've always built around defense and running the football. That's the Pete Carroll way. But it's clear now, ever since the Legion of Boom sort of became a thing of the past, and Marshawn Lynch obviously retired and left the team, that this has been Russell Wilson's team. He has been the only thing keeping them afloat for the past couple of seasons. Yes, they have some nice weapons, specifically like DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, and there are still guys like Bobby Wagner and KJ Wright on the defensive end as well. But the reason why they're winning games each and every year and never having a losing season since 2012 is because of Russell Wilson. It's not because of Pete Carroll. We know the saying, let Russ cook. But the Seahawks have never truly let Russ own a kitchen, if that makes sense. So they've always let Russ cook here and there for a possession a game. They sort of open up the playbook and let Russell Wilson do magical things. But instead of letting Russ cook, why don't we let Russ be head chef, or let Russ own the restaurant? Why don't we let him have the say on the menu and things like that? He wants more input on play calling and the game plan and the offensive line. Again, he wants to get hit less. I'm sure he loves DK and Tyler Lockett, but maybe he wants another guy at the tight end position or something like that. Or just, again, better tackles or things like that as well. So Russell Wilson wants more say, and again, I don't think we're at the point where, Russell Wilson and Deshaun Watson are both, asking to be out. I don't think they're at the same level. I think Deshaun Watson, again, has taken it to a level further than Russell Wilson has. And again, Deshaun Watson has it worse than Russell Wilson has. Seattle maybe has a power-hungry organization. There's power struggle between him and Pete Carroll, but again, they make the playoffs consistently. Russell Wilson has good weapons, has a decent defense, doesn't have a great O-line, but again, Pete Carroll's a better head coach than maybe a guy like Bill O'Brien or someone Deshaun Watson's going to have to work with. Again, better ownership, all of that. Seattle is a better, well-run organization than the Houston Texans are, so there's a difference there. But Russell Wilson is aware, and he sees that, hey, I see the path I'm going. I'm not going to get hit 300 more times in the next 10 years like I've been hit in the first 8 years of my career. I've already been hit, 352 times like that in 8 years? I'm not taking that again for the next 8 years. They have to build that around better than me. And here's the thing. Somebody is the reason for this. Why all of a sudden is now Russell Wilson talking? Russell Wilson has always been a team guy, almost Andrew Luck-esque in the way he's been a team guy, constantly raving about the organization, constant talking about his teammates, the coaching staff, the preparation, taking none of the credit for the wins and all the blames for the losses. Russell Wilson is probably one of the better leaders in the NFL, ultimate team guy, so it has to be pretty bad for him to speak up in the public eye and the media and things like that. Here's why I think things changed. And I think they changed actually pretty recently, which is why I don't see Russell Wilson being traded to any of the 4 teams that were leaked that he would welcome a trade to. We'll talk about that in a minute as well in the next segment. Which team should be going in on Russell Wilson and things like that. At the Super Bowl, Russell Wilson was there. He was in person in Tampa Bay, sitting next to the commissioner, Roger Goodell, with his wife Sierra, watching the Tampa Bay Buccaneers beat, of course, Tom Brady, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, in his first year with the new team, beat the Kansas City Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes were potentially on the come-up of a dynasty. Russell Wilson watched Tom Brady, a team in Tampa Bay who went all in on him at 42 years old, win a Super Bowl. And Russell Wilson had to be sitting there watching 42 or 43-year-old Tom Brady, coming off one of the worst years of his career last year, somehow get Tampa Bay to commit all in on him, and it works out. They win the Super Bowl. They get on the line. They get on the weapons. They have him have, as Bruce Arians says, sometimes I just let Tom coach. They give him, sort of maybe coaching privileges in a way, sort of like that, input on the game plan, input of the roster. He lets them bring Gronk in. He lets them bring Antonio Brown in. They do whatever Tom Brady wants because Tom Brady is smart. Tom Brady is the winning culture. They realize that. Tampa Bay understands that one of the biggest reasons, and probably the biggest reason why the New England Patriots had a dynasty was because of Tom Brady. So Tampa Bay said, we're going to go all in on that guy. It's a no-brainer. And Russell Wilson is watching that game and seeing how Tom Brady is thriving with a team that's going all in on him. And he's wondering, why isn't the Seattle Seahawks organization, who I have carried to not a single losing season in my 8 to 9 years as a Seattle Seahawks quarterback. We've only had winning seasons. I've brought them a Super Bowl and a Super Bowl appearance, multiple playoff playoff wins, incredible clutch moments, and I'm still in my prime. He's not even 42 or 43 like Tom Brady is. He's 31, yet the Seattle Seahawks still haven't gone all in on him roster-wise, and still haven't maybe made that commitment to him, which has led him to speak out and talk about being protected and things like that. Tom Brady might have started a movement, folks, that when we see all of these quarterbacks asking out, wanting to be moved, Russell Wilson potentially, now we're looking at Deshaun Watson, some of these other guys are reclamation projects and things like that. Tom Brady has proved that you can win somewhere else. We knew Peyton Manning did it, but at the end of the day, nobody gave Peyton Manning the credit of, the winning that Super Bowl in Denver. A lot of people said it was because of that defense and Peyton's arm was dying at that point. Tom Brady gets a lot of credit for the Super Bowl. He left a system that he was there for 20 years in New England, went to Tampa Bay, and became world champions yet again. So Russell Wilson is thinking, I can go to a team like Chicago, Dallas, the Las Vegas Raiders, the Chicago Bears, teams with good offensive lines, good defenses, maybe better coaching if he envisions, John Gruden over Pete Carroll or Matt Nagy over Pete Carroll, whatever he thinks in his own head or something like that. And then they move forward and he can win not just now but in the future as well. So he has to look at Tom Brady's situation and say, if he can leave his team and his system and his coach that he was working with for so long and succeed right out of the gate, why can't I? And Russell Wilson just wants to feel appreciated. He wants to feel wanted. He wants to feel not like the third round draft pick, right? Nobody was ever sold on Russell Wilson. Nobody was like, he's the best quarterback in this draft class, even though he has been the best quarterback in the 2012 draft class. Nobody thought he was going to be the best because he's too small, he's too skinny, he's not quick enough, he doesn't have a big enough arm, again, he's not tall enough, whatever it might be. He's been hearing all these doubts his entire life. So when he proves everybody wrong and wins the Super Bowl and has another Super Bowl appearance and has 9 straight winning seasons with the Seattle Seahawks and does everything in his power to win games, takes 352 sacks over the last 9 years, only Deshaun Watson has taken more, and he still is not wanted enough for a team to go all in on him, he has to be frustrated. He has to be almost at a loss of why Seattle hasn't been willing to go all in on him yet. Yes, they gave him the contract, but that only does so much. Deshaun Watson got the contract, but yet they're not going with him saying, hey, Deshaun, who do you want to hire? Let's interview this person. Let's talk to, like we said, Eric Bieniemy. They took forever, weeks and weeks to even request an interview with him on Zoom, let alone in person, things like that. So he wants to feel wanted. He wants to feel appreciated. He wants to get the Tom Brady treatment because in his eyes, he's done the Tom Brady work for the Seattle Seahawks. Maybe not in championships, but with the work ethic, the leadership, the being the team guy, buying into them. Russell Wilson is all in on Seattle. He wants Seattle to be all in on him. That's just, I think, common courtesy at this point, and I don't think Seattle can really let him walk out that door. All right, we're going to take a quick break here, but on the other side of this short break, I do want to get to the 4 teams that he mentioned: Chicago, Dallas, Las Vegas, and of course, I think the Bears is the other team as well. We'll get to all 4 of those teams, what trade packages we could potentially see, and I want to rank them in order of best fit to worst fit for Russell Wilson going forward, and again, what a kind of trade package will look like. So we'll talk about Russell Wilson's potential 4 destinations coming up right after this short break.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines. They got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, and we are back here at the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Again, for the next segment of today's show. Again, we really do appreciate you listening to the show. If you're a returning listener, we really do appreciate you. I just finished giving you my spiel on the first layer of the Russell Wilson situation. I just wanted to give you guys some context. Of course, you probably saw the Adam Schefter tweet that said he was requesting, or that he didn't formally request a trade, but the only teams that he would waive his no trade clause for if he were to be traded were these 4 teams, yada yada this. So he hasn't officially demanded a trade, unlike Deshaun Watson has. But if there were to be a split, maybe a mutual split between the Seahawks and Russell Wilson, those are the 4 teams, the only 4 teams he said that he would waive his no trade clause for. So let's get into those 4 teams. I want to rank them 1 to 4 on the best fits for Russell Wilson that could potentially be deemed the most success. I want to tell you why each of these teams, because I believe all of them should obviously, if they can get Russell Wilson, they should. So let's just rank them right now 1 to 4. Let's get right into it. So again, the 4 teams that Russell Wilson decided to leak out there as teams that he would waive his no trade clause for are the Raiders, the Bears, the Cowboys, and the Saints. So those are the 4 teams that, if a mutual split between, again, the Seahawks and Russell Wilson were to happen, those would be the 4 teams he would waive his no trade clause for. And that's a very different list to Deshaun Watson's, which includes teams like the Jets, Dolphins, and Panthers. So again, 2 completely different quarterbacks, 2 completely different situations, wanted to go to completely different teams potentially. And again, who knows if Russell Wilson is ever actually going to leave Seattle. If I had to bet right now, I would say that Russell Wilson would still be the Seattle Seahawks quarterback next season. I think they'll work things out. I think they'll go all in on him. I don't think Seattle can afford to let him go out the door without getting a quarterback back in return. They don't have a high enough draft pick to secure a guy like a Trey Lance, or even they'd be in like Mac Jones territory. I don't know if they want to do that. And some people have even speculated Mac Jones going top 15, so be out of that race unless you trade him to Chicago or something. So again, I don't think they're going to have him walk out that door. I think Russell Wilson will be a Seahawk for the considerable and long future, and I think they will go all in on him. But again, he did put 4 teams out there, which means that this is something where there's smoke, there's fire. There's obviously been some talk of, hey, if we were to trade you potentially, what are the 4 teams? Boom, here they are. So there's been clearly some discussions. So I want to rank the destinations from 1 to 4 and tell you why each of these teams should get Russell Wilson if they can. But I don't know if it's realistic for any of these teams to really get him. But we'll start off right here. So coming in at number 4, out of all of the destinations that Russell Wilson can go to, I think it's both a combination of most unlikely and sort of doesn't make the most sense for the Saints to go in on Russell Wilson. Again, if they can get Russell Wilson, they should. But again, they're $90 million over the cap. They pay guys like Michael Thomas and Alvin Kamara huge contracts. They're going to have to pay Marshawn Lattimore eventually as well if they aren't already. Again, you're going to have to make a decision on Emmanuel Sanders. Do you cut him? Do you not? The Drew Brees contract situation. Is he coming back? Is he not? Where do you go for, Taysom Hill's money and things like that? So again, I don't know what assets they have to be able to acquire a guy like, Russell Wilson. I feel like it would have to be Alvin Kamara. Again, they don't have the high draft pick. And again, you have to make the money work somehow as well. So you'd have to give up one of Michael Thomas or Alvin Kamara probably to make the money work, unless you're throwing a guy like Cam Jordan, but he's a veteran. An older veteran at that stage too as well. So that it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, specifically because of the cap space situation, that they would be able to inherit Russell Wilson's contract without giving up a guy like Kamara. And again, maybe they would be willing to move off a guy like Mike Thomas, who had some issues last year, in order to get a guy like Russell Wilson. But why would Seattle want Mike Thomas when they already have Tyler Lockett, who they pay money to, and they're going to have to pay DK Metcalf for the next 2 years as well? So it doesn't make a lot of sense to bring in a top 5 paid wide receiver to that group as well, especially when you have an unknown quarterback if you're moving him to the Saints, because they don't really have a quarterback that can give you back in return. You're not going to want a guy like Taysom Hill or something like that. So you'd be taking at the end of the first round a guy like maybe Mac Jones to come in, or maybe you're signing a free agent. All that stuff seems like a step backwards, which you're not going to want to do. So again, the Saints just don't make a lot of sense for me from a financial standpoint. I think the Saints are going to have to do a little bit of a reset here just because of the cap space situation. They went all in on Drew Brees last year, and then it didn't get them a Super Bowl. Again, there's been some rumors that he might be coming back. I don't know about all that. I thought it was pretty concrete that he was going to go head into the broadcasting booth, but there was some footage of him working out and things like that. If I were the Saints, I'd want Drew to retire at this stage. His arm isn't what it used to be. It's going to be hard to keep bringing back cap guy after cap guy, veteran after veteran, contract after contract, to keep moving this franchise forward. And at the end of the day, you just have to wonder, is he holding the Saints back at this point? We saw last year at the playoffs how he didn't look right, that he was underthrowing a lot of balls, and Jameis Winston came in and threw that one deep ball, and some people were saying that Jameis should have come into the game, I don't necessarily disagree. So I don't see Drew Brees coming back, but I also don't see Russell Wilson being the Saints quarterback. So I have them coming in at number 4. Coming in number 3 at the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, one of the reasons why they are number 3 is it's an interesting thing here, because I understand why Russell Wilson wants to go there. They have a fantastic offensive line. They have fantastic weapons. They were one of the best offenses in the league last year. So I think all of these 3 teams, Chicago, Dallas, and of course this team as well, the Las Vegas Raiders, all should go in on him. This is close. I think there's a considerable gap between these 3 teams and the Saints. I think the Saints are out of it. I think if there's going to be a team Russell Wilson's traded to, it's probably one of these 3 teams. But I would put Vegas there last because I think Russell Wilson would probably want to go there the least, just because of how hard that division is. You have Patrick Mahomes twice a year. Not sure if Russell Wilson wants to deal with that. Not to mention Justin Herbert twice a year, and he just won Rookie of the Year and broke a lot of Andrew Luck-like records, so it's going to be hard to envision Russell wanting to play for that too, considering the Chargers and Chiefs probably have the best rosters in the division. Who knows if the new Charger coach will do anything, potentially with that roster, but still, there's always that possibility. There's always one head coach that's a rock star right out of the gate. Brian Flores was one of them for the Miami Dolphins. Matt LaFleur, of course, for the Green Bay Packers. So guys are good early in the coaching world, so it wouldn't surprise me if the Chargers took off next year. And, of course, the Broncos are a good defensive team. And again, Russell Wilson going to the AFC, I don't know if he wants to do that. With all the really good young quarterbacks out there, again, Mahomes, Herbert, of course, Baker Mayfield, Lamar Jackson, potentially, Deshaun Watson's there now, might stay there, of course. So again, the AFC is absolutely stacked and loaded with quarterbacks, not to mention Trevor Lawrence is probably going to the AFC, and also potentially Zach Wilson as well going to the New York Jets. So you have a completely stacked young quarterback group in the AFC. You probably have an easier path to the Super Bowl in the NFC. So again, being the remaining AFC team, I'd probably put them at 3rd, the Las Vegas Raiders, in orders of, Russell Wilson preferred teams. Coming in at number 2 is the Chicago Bears. Now, I know what you're going to say. That means Dallas is number 1, and I will get into both of them, but let me talk about Chicago. Chicago should absolutely be the first team to call for Russell Wilson. They should be number 1. If they were on his list and they needed a quarterback the most out of any of these teams available, Mitch Trubisky is not the answer. Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy's jobs are on the line this season. You already run an athletic quarterback system. It makes too much sense. We know the rivalry that Russell Wilson and Aaron Rodgers have. They're talked about statistically because of how high their QBR records are next to each other. We know they've had a ton of NFC battles already. I would absolutely love to see Russell Wilson head to the Chicago Bears. They should be the first one calling. Offer Khalil Mack, offer whoever it takes, David Montgomery, whatever it takes. Get Russell Wilson in Chicago, because if you have Russell Wilson in Chicago, you could convince Allen Robinson to maybe not go to Baltimore and come back to Chicago to become potentially the all-time leading receiver there. And then you have a Russell Wilson-Allen Robinson pairing to go up against Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams. You already made the playoffs last year in a weaker NFC. No reason why Chicago Bears or Russell Wilson-led Chicago Bears team wouldn't make the playoffs again next year. They should be the first team to call, even more than the Cowboys, who I have number 1 on this list. They really should be the first ones to call for Russell Wilson. They need him the most, and not many quarterbacks have been wanting to play in Chicago recently, so they have a golden opportunity here. Whatever it takes, 3-4 first-round picks, whatever you need to do to get an MVP caliber guy like Russell Wilson in Chicago, you do it, in my opinion. Then, of course, we have the Dallas Cowboys, which was obviously the eyebrow raiser. The number 1 reason why I have the Cowboys on here is because if Russell Wilson's going to be traded, I think this is the most realistic destination. I understand that there's an NFL Network report that it's laughable that they would trade for Russell Wilson. They're all in on Dak and blah, 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 this. They've been all in on Dak for 3 years now, and they still haven't gotten this contract done. They're probably going to franchise tag him for the second time. After players notoriously get tagged for the second time, they usually don't want to play with that team moving forward. If you remember, Kirk Cousins then left Washington after he got tagged twice. And again, the longer this goes on, this contract negotiation process, the percentage chance of Dak Prescott being the Cowboys quarterback goes down. And it's clear that Dak lost leverage when that tweet came out that Russell Wilson potentially wants to be the Dallas Cowboys quarterback, because Russell Wilson's better than Dak Prescott, and he's cheaper considering how much money Dak Prescott really wants. So now, in my opinion, the max amount of money that Dak Prescott can really ask for in a contract is a little bit less than Russell Wilson money, because anything on par with Russell Wilson money or higher, if I'm Jerry Jones and the Dallas Cowboys, I'm just going to say, we'll just trade you to Seattle for Russell Wilson, who's cheaper and better than you. And for that reason also, if Russell Wilson were to be moved, Seattle would obviously want to remain competitive. Pete Carroll's one of the oldest coaches in the league. He's not going to want to go through a full rebuild with a young quarterback. Bring Dak Prescott in potentially. You could still make the playoffs in Seattle with a Dak Prescott-led Seahawks team that focuses on running the ball and playing defense, just like Pete Carroll wants. And again, if Jerry Jones, who's also one of the oldest owners in the league, who's obviously looking looking for another Super Bowl before his time is done with the Dallas Cowboys ownership, he's obviously going to go all in. He's one of the most aggressive owners in the entire league. And if you add Russell Wilson to Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, and all this incredible Michael Gallup, this incredible offensive weaponry, you're talking about the best offense in the NFL in Dallas, which means ratings, jersey sales, and money for Jerry Jones. So I know he's looking at this as a, wow, I can have the best offense in the NFL in the best stadium in the NFL for quote-unquote America's team. That's going to boost the Cowboy brand to 80s level heights potentially. And sure, they're not going to be able to stop anybody, but that means their games are going to be fun as hell, which again, TV ratings and everything like that. So it makes a lot of sense for the Cowboys and Jerry Jones to go all in on Russell Wilson. And if Seattle were to ever move off of probably their best player in franchise history, again, Russell Wilson, they would have to get a guy like Dak Prescott back who could probably keep them in the playoff loop. And maybe even do more so, win a playoff game or something like that. Dak Prescott is as close to that elite level quarterback in my opinion. So those are my 4 rankings for the Russell Wilson destinations. Let me know where you think Russell Wilson would be traded to if he were to actually depart with the city of Seattle and the Seahawks organization. It's going to be a fascinating situation to see going forward. We're going to take another short break here, but on the other side of this short break, I want to break down some NFL draft stuff. Who is the number 1 quarterback in this draft class and why? Why are people talking about Zach Wilson so much? And I want to give you my top 5 wide receivers in this year's historically special wide receiving draft class. We're going to tell all that great stuff right after this short break.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, and we are back here at the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Again, I am your host, Alex Masford. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode and to be continuing to listen to the show. If you're a returning listener, we really do appreciate you. I just finished giving you my spiel on the 4 teams that could be landing Russell Wilson this offseason if he does indeed decide to depart from the city of Seattle and the Seahawks organization. Again, those teams, Cowboys, Bears, Vegas, and the Saints. All interesting teams. Again, the Cowboys would be an incredible just mix-up of superstar and, organization and Jerry Jones and the ratings and everything. So I think if the NFL could have Russell Wilson on the Cowboys, they'd ask for it to happen. But I don't know. I don't know if they're actually going to move off of Russell. But again, if they were to get, a guy like Dak, maybe you throw in, I don't know, some picks on, Dallas's side. You give them Dak, maybe you give them Michael Gallup, you throw him over there, and then all of a sudden you have a reasonable offer for Russell Wilson if there even is one. But man, him in Dallas would be a lot of fun. I want to transition here now to the NFL draft, and I want to touch on 2 topics. One of them being this current quarterback class. Now, there will be a segment in one of these episodes where I give you my top 5 quarterbacks or top 7 quarterbacks in this year's class. Just like later on in this segment, I'll be giving you my top 5 wide receivers in this class. But I do want to touch on one interesting debate, and that's Trevor Lawrence versus BYU's Zach Wilson. Now, me and a lot of other people have told you that Trevor Lawrence has been anointed as this incredible quarterback prospect, might be the greatest quarterback prospect of all time. 6'6", mobile, can make every throw in the book, platform, off platform, the whole thing. He's absolutely ridiculous, and I'll get into the off-platform thing in a minute here. But there are some moments. He was outplayed by Joe Burrow in the national championship game, was recently outplayed by Justin Fields, and that Ohio State pass rush really got to him, and they really struggled to deal with pressure, and he really struggled to deal with pressure. So there's, of course, some concerns, but we don't want to over nitpick quarterback prospects like that. We saw what happened to Justin Herbert, a guy we over sort of evaluated, if there is such a thing, nitpicked some of his arm mechanics and things like that, when it turns out he was just a really good player in a system that wasn't all in on him, and now he's with the Chargers and we're seeing those true abilities. Now, there is one thing, in my opinion, that Zach Wilson does, or really two things, but one main topic that Zach Wilson does better than Trevor Lawrence. In my opinion, there is only one thing that Zach Wilson does better than Trevor Lawrence, and that's playmaking. Now, playmaking is this new X-factor thing at the quarterback position, because before, mobile quarterbacks would have to sort of, go to the right team, go to the right situation, go to the Patriots, go to the Steelers, go to the high-end, people like Lamar Jackson had to fall to the Ravens and things like that if you're a mobile quarterback in order to succeed. Now, people want mobile quarterbacks. Mobile quarterbacks are going to the top of the draft. We look at Kyler Murray going to the top of the draft. Even Baker Mayfield, his escapability goes to the top of the draft, things like that. So playmaking is a huge aspect, and we see the plays that Deshaun Watson, Patrick Mahomes, Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson make. They make these crazy throws. They throw on the run. They do all these crazy things that aren't just the standard surveil the defense and throw a pocket pass like Tom Brady does or like Drew Brees did for years and years and things like that. But that's the way the future of the league is going. Patrick Mahomes is a playmaker. You saw what happened in the Super Bowl. You never know in an NFL game where you're going to have to be running for your life as a quarterback. One of the better offensive line in the league is the Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes doesn't get hit all too often, but in the Super Bowl, he was running for his life every single play. If Patrick Mahomes wasn't a playmaker, that game would have ended in the first quarter. Instead, it probably ended at some point, in the third or fourth quarter when they couldn't get any points. Obviously, he wasn't a playmaker enough to maybe necessarily win the game, but you saw the crazy throws he was making on the run and things like that. We've seen what Deshaun Watson does. You know what Russell Wilson does. That's the future of the league. Zach Wilson is a better playmaker than Trevor Lawrence. He's a better, I don't want to say he's a better off-platform thrower, but there's definitely more tape of him throwing off-platform than Trevor Lawrence is. Now, what I mean by that is Zach Wilson didn't have the greatest team around him at BYU. He was the number one offensive weapon on that team. They didn't have the greatest offensive line, so he made a lot of throws on the run, off-platform, some of those elastic band-like arm plays. Now, while I am extremely high on Zach Wilson, and on tape it would appear that he is a better playmaker than Trevor Lawrence, he is not the number one draft prospect of this class. Trevor Lawrence is. Trevor Lawrence has the better arm. He's got the better size. In my opinion, he is just as fast. I know that Zach Wilson shows off those legs a lot more than Trevor Lawrence does and shows off that speed more than he does. That's just because he has to for his offense. Trevor Lawrence doesn't need to run to make the Clemson offense productive. And while on tape, it appears, and a lot of people would say, guys like Matt Miller, highly respected drafts, analysis, people would say that he's a really good playmaker, probably a better playmaker than Trevor Lawrence. Just be careful, because when Trevor Lawrence gets to Jacksonville and he's going to be asked to be a playmaker, it wouldn't surprise me if he's more of a playmaker than we've been led on to, just because Clemson just had such a stacked team. They didn't need him to do all these crazy runaround throws and things like that. He showed some of them off on his pro day, though, with that last throw where he sort of did like a double back twice and throw a complete, threw a post for about 70 yards in air. Ridiculous stuff off platform on the run, all that crazy stuff. So it is something to monitor going forward, but at the end of the day, I have Zach Wilson a tier below Trevor Lawrence, but I am very high on Zach Wilson. If I were Zach Wilson, or if I were the Jets, I would move off of Sam Darnold. I would bring in Zach Wilson. I think that is an upgrade, but I think Trevor Lawrence is still the number one player in this class. Again, just from all the intangibles, from all the things like that. He just looks like a better version of Justin Herbert, and Justin Herbert broke every record last year, so that's what I see in Trevor Lawrence. Let me know what you guys think of the quarterback debate. Now, for the final part of this segment, I want to give you guys my top 5 wide receivers in this draft class. Now, a lot of people have been talking about last year's draft class, and throughout the years, there's been some historically great draft classes, including last year's. I am personally of the belief that this year's draft class in the NFL, wide receivers that is, in just the receiver position, has the chance to be the greatest wide receiver draft class of all time. Now, I understand that we look at ones that have gone throughout the history. Jerry Rice's class, of course. Odell had a pretty good class as well, with Jarvis Landry also being in there, of course. DK Metcalf's class. Last year's class, of course, was really good as well. Again, some guys still need to pan out, but we saw a lot of guys like Justin Jefferson break records and things like that. I think this year, the 2021 NFL wide receiver draft class has the chance to be the greatest wide receiver draft class of all time. Right now, I have a list of my top 5 receivers, and it was extremely hard to make this list at all of who I believe were the 5 best receivers in college football this year and who should be, the 5 best receivers going into the draft this season. Again, there's a lot of really great guys in this class. It was really hard to make this list. I don't think a lot of distance even really separates all of them together. I think there's definitely tiers to this, and I think that these 5 are in a tier above their own, but I don't know if any one of these guys is necessarily far and away better than the other, except for maybe the first guy that I'll mention here. But I had a lot of fun making this list, so let's just get right into it. Here are my top 5 wide receivers, and what I believe is going to be the best wide receiver draft class of all time. I really do believe that 5 years down the line, we're going to look at guys and see, wow, there's 5 to 8 guys in this class that are putting up all-star, all-pro numbers year in, year out. I really do believe that. So let's get right into it. Coming in at number 5, this is going to be from 5 to 1 here. Number 5 is Rondale Moore. So if you don't know who Rondale Moore is, he is a wide receiver out of Purdue, was a 4-star out of high school, had offers from every single place in the book. You can think of Alabama, all those great places. He decided to stay, not necessarily local, he's from Kentucky, but he went to Purdue, a Big Ten school, and he was the number 1 weapon on that team. He played early. He wears number 4 if you want to look up some highlights and things like that. People talk about being a Tyreek Hill clone, and I will obviously talk about Jalen Waddle, and people have compared him to a Tyreek Hill clone. I personally see Rondale Moore more as a sort of a clone of Tyreek Hill than Jalen Waddle is personally. I think Jalen Waddle is better than Rondale Moore, and he is obviously on this list, and I will talk about it. I don't know if he's much better, but just from a play style standpoint, from a size standpoint, Rondale Moore's 5'9". He does a lot of that end-around stuff, does a lot of stuff out of the backfield for them as well. He's got fantastic hands, really good ball location ability over the shoulder, given his size at 5'9". He has great ball location as well, but he's got this sort of physicality game about him because, again, he's super fast, might be the fastest receiver in this class, not named Jalen Waddle. I would probably put him at number 2. Moves like Tyreek Hill, cuts like Tyreek Hill, has a really good stutter step, really good at eye fakes on the defense as well, shoulder fakes, head fakes. He can do it all, every single thing, but he also has a physicality about his game that I love given a player to side. It's at only 5'9", he's a skinny guy as well. You see a lot of things on tape, specifically against games, and the big ones, like Ohio State and Northwestern, 2 incredibly top 15 programs this year, top 10 at one point. He took it to them. He was the best player on the field in the Ohio State game. I really do believe that. He was also the best receiver on the field for the Ohio State game, better than Chris Olave. I really do believe that. And he was killing Northwestern and Ohio State, but not just getting these end arounds, taking it 15 yards and running out of bounds like we see Tyreek Hill do and things like that. He was lowering his shoulder and putting his shoulder in the chest of the Ohio State safeties and linebackers and the Northwestern corners and things like that. And you'll see that he breaks a lot of tackles, not just with his speed, but with his physicality and his low center of gravity. He knows what to do with his body. He is very in control, despite the fact being 5'9" and probably on the lighter side from a receiver. When you look at him, he's not the biggest guy in the world, but he's so in tune and so in control of his body with his balance and his foot movement and his cuts. And again, he just understands himself so well that he finds these low center of gravity moments where he's able to break a tackle just through physicality. He just fights through it, lowers the shoulder, and almost running back X somehow finds his way into the end zone. You'll find a lot of those plays against Northwestern. I recommend if you want to look at some highlights against him, of him. Minnesota as well was a great game for him as well. And, of course, the Northwestern game. Those were the biggest games of the year for Purdue, and he showed up. So, again, he's going to fall later on in the draft. He's not going to be, the guys like, Waddle, Chase, Smith, who are all going to go at the, the very top of the draft. You're not going to see that. You're not going to see, him go that high. So he's going to fall to a better team. In my opinion, he's going to go in the first round. A lot of people have a second-round grade on him. A lot of people have 4 wide receivers going in the top, in the first round this year. A lot of people have Jamar Chase, Jalen Waddle, Devonta Smith, and Rashad Bateman going in the first round. I think those are all locks. I really do believe Rondale Moore is going to be a first-rounder this year, and it wouldn't surprise me if Kadarius Toney is also a first-rounder out of Florida. He was my 6th wide receiver, and my 7th, if you're wondering, is Amari Rodgers out of Clemson. I think potentially all 7 of those guys can go in the first round. I don't think Amari Rodgers will go in the first round. I think he'll go in the second round. And I think Kadarius Toney's going to slip to the top of the second round as well. But keep an eye on Rondale Moore for a team like the Green Bay Packers, for a team really at the end of the first round, just looking for any weapons. Baltimore Ravens, again, really like a speed guy. Reminds me a lot of Tyreek Hill. More of a Tyreek Hill clone, in my opinion, than a guy like Jalen Waddle is. He is absolutely so much fun to watch just from start to finish. So Rondale Moore, Purdue, coming in at number 5 on this list of the best receivers in this draft class. Coming in at number 4 is going to be an interesting one. I have Jalen Waddle here. Jalen Waddle, in my opinion, is not a top 3 wide receiver in this class. I still think he's a fantastic player, and in my opinion, I would pick him in the top top 10. I really would. I think from 4 to 1 I would pick in the top 10. I would pick Rondale Moore from the 10 to 15 range, and I would pick the rest of these guys in the top 10. I think they are that good. I think they're all playmakers. They're all difference makers, and they all do a little bit things that maybe the other guy doesn't do. So let's get into to Jalen Waddle here. A lot of people have been saying Tyreek Hill clone. I understand that. Let me give you a different name. I personally envision a little bit more of an Antonio Brown. He's got the speed for sure. He's probably a little bit faster than Antonio is, probably closer to Tyreek in speed than Antonio is, but his hands and his ball location, his cut ability reminds me more of an Antonio Brown. He does a really good job on some comeback routes. He's not just a deep threat sort of guy. He can take the slant, he can take the out, he can do a lot more route running than maybe Tyreek Hill could do earlier on in his career. Obviously Tyreek Hill can do it all now, but I'm just saying more as a polished guy out of college. I see more of an Antonio Brown, a guy who can kill you, not just in the deep threat, but also attack in between the numbers. I could see him doing a lot of stuff over the middle of the field just because of his speed and route running. He's got a really nice comeback route too that I like to watch a lot on tape as well of him. So Jalen Waddle's coming in at number 4 of this list. Again, that's not saying that he's not good or anything like that. Again, all 5 of these guys I'd take in the first round. All 5 of these guys I'd take in the top 15, and specifically Waddle and up I would take in the top 10. Keep an eye on the New York Giants, who pick number 11. This would be a great pick for them. I could also see a team in the top 10 reaching. I could see Miami trading back and taking him. I could see Philadelphia surprising everybody and maybe taking him over a guy like, Devontae Smith or something like that. Detroit Lions are a team to keep an eye on. I think he will go in the top 12. I think the latest he goes is 11 to the New York Giants, but I expect him to go earlier than that. I really, really like what I see from Jalen Waddle, and I think he'll live up to the hype. I think he's a fantastic player. Coming in at number 3, this is a name that you might not have heard of in comparison. So, again, you've heard of Jamar Chase, Devonta Smith, and Jalen Waddle. You know those 3 names. If you know college football, you watch college football. That was, the LSU, the Alabamas. But the 2 names I want to give you, one of them being Rondale Moore, who I already gave you. I think he's a special player and could be more of a Tyreek Hill clone than Jalen Waddle is. The other guy you might not have heard of is Rashad Bateman. Now, he's coming out of Minnesota, wore number 0 and 13 if you look up highlights. Earlier on in his Minnesota career, wore 13, wore 0 now. He can do it all. He apparently ran a sub-4 440 at the, I think it's the Exodus Combine, both laser time and hand time. He's 6'2", 6'3". He can do it all. He's got the route running, he's got the physicality, he's got the playmaking, and he's got the speed. In my opinion, he has the potential to be the best wide receiver in this class. I don't think Rondale Moore will ever be the best receiver in this class. I don't know if Jalen Waddle will ever be considered the best player in this class, or in this wide receiver class. But Rashad Bateman has a chance to be better than Devontae Smith and Jamar Chase, who I will obviously talk about. Just because of that size and physicality aspect of it, he's taller than both of them. I think he's heavier than both of them, and he's just as fast as both of them as well. You also have to keep in mind that Joe Burrow was throwing to Jamar Chase. Tua Tagovailoa and Mac Jones were throwing to Devontae Smith. Rashad Bateman and Rondale Moore, guys like that, they were working at Purdue in Minnesota, didn't have the greatest talent all around them. They were the number one wide receiver week in, week out, facing the top cornerbacks for their team, going against Ohio State, Northwestern, 2 incredible defenses, and giving it to them. Now, Rashad Bateman, in my opinion, is better than Rondale Moore. Again, he is taller. He's also better than Waddle, as I've mentioned. I could see him going below Waddle, though. I think that my list will not represent the accurate list of the NFL draft. In my opinion, the way the order of the draft, the receivers will be drafted is, I think Jamar Chase is going to be the first receiver off the board, then Devonta Smith, then Jalen Waddle, then Rashad Bateman, then Rondale Moore. So the order of the list that I have in my personal rankings is different than the way I think they will go in the draft. But I think Bateman will be better than Waddle, and I think he has this chance to be this year's Justin Jefferson. I think he'll go to between the 15 and 18 range, or really 12 to 22 if you want to expand it a little bit more. Keep an eye on the New England Patriots. I think this will be a fantastic pickup for them. They need any type of receiver. Some teams already have a physical guy, or teams like the Chiefs already have a speed guy, so they're looking for the opposite. They're looking for a speed or a physical. Patriots got nothing. They don't have a speed guy. They don't have a physical guy. He does both. And they're not going to be able to get Jamar Chase or Devonta Smith at the top of the draft. I would pick him at 15 and not look back. Try to get a quarterback like Marcus Mariota or something like that in free agency. I wouldn't take Mac Jones at 15. Rashad Bateman's a do-it-all type of receiver. Can hit you with any route in the route tree. Also has the top end speed, sub 4.40 apparently, and he's got this, the size and physicality and hands to go up with the big boy physical corners and win some jump balls, fade routes in the end zone as well. He can do it all. I love Rashad Bateman. He's coming in at number 3 on this list. Coming in at number 2, I'm going to give it to Devonta Smith, the Heisman winner. Now, I understand that the back and forth argument between him and Jamar Chase is going to go down all the way to the draft. At the end of the day, it is not about Devonta Smith's body. I don't think the narrative that some people are putting out there of why Devontae Smith is lower than Jamar Chase is because of his weight. It's not because of that. I don't believe that Devonta Smith's height or weight, if you want to put it, considering how skinny he is or how skinny his legs are, is going to be an issue in the NFL. I look at him, I see a carbon copy of Marvin Harrison. I really do. I think he's that good. I think he has Hall of Fame potential, and I think he's going to be an explosive player in this league. I just don't think he's the best overall wide receiver in this draft class. Some of it has to do with the physicality. Some of it has to do with the top-end speed. Some of it like that. Again, he's an incredible player. He is super fast on tape. I don't care what he's going to run in the 40 time. Again, 40s are irrelevant in this stage, folks. You got to see where the trend is going in the NFL. 40 times of the combine are becoming irrelevant. Watch those new age Amazon or web services trackers on, how fast they're running on the field. That's football speed. That's what you want to look at. And Devonta Smith has football speed, not just track speed like a 40-yard dash like a Waddle or Moore has. Now, at the end of the day, is he going to wow you with his physical ability? Not necessarily, but all Devontae Smith did for the last 3 years is make plays at Alabama in a system that constantly produced wide receivers. He constantly found the way to get over 1,000 yards and have the ball in his hands. Finally became the number one wide receiver at Alabama and won the Heisman. I'd look at number 6, Philadelphia. This makes too much sense for me. They need a receiver. He won the Heisman. They need some juice back in the franchise now that everything seems to be sort of like a dumpster fire there. Reminds me a lot of just a better version of Deshaun Jackson, to be completely honest with you. Deshaun Jackson was sort of a one-trick pony with a deep threat. Devonta Smith can do it way all than that. I'm just talking about from a body size and things like that. Built a little bit like Deshaun Jackson. Top-end speed, he's got it. Jump ball ability, he's got it. Devonta Smith, potentially Marvin Harrison 2.0 in my opinion. Going to the Philadelphia Eagles at 6, I think makes the most sense. I think you could put that one in pencil. Now, the number one wide receiver in this draft class, in my opinion, is still Jamar Chase. I think he can do every single thing Devonta Smith can do, but he's bigger, and I think he's just a little bit better at it. The things he do with his as a deep threat, as a breaking tackler aspect, I think he's a better playmaker in a way of Devonta Smith. I think Devonta Smith can certainly outrun people, but if you do get your hands on him, he tends to go down. He doesn't fight through a lot of tackles. Jamar Chase breaks a ton of tackles with his sort of built like a running back stature. I love Jamar Chase. I think he's a faster Anquan Bolden. That's how I view it, in my opinion, which is a Hall of Fame level player, of course. And if you add Anquan Bolden's jump ball ability and size to the speed of sort of a undersized, smaller guy and the physicality of a running back, that's what you have in Jamar Chase. I think he's going to be a Hall of Fame level player. I look at the Miami Dolphins at 3. They need a receiver so badly. Don't take Penei Sewell. Get Tua some help on the receiver position. They need to sign a receiver and draft a dude like Jamar Chase. He's an absolute stud. He's the number one wide receiver in this draft class, in my opinion. I don't know if you can tell, but I absolutely love talking NFL draft. It's coming up in April. Free agency is March 17th, so we'll get free agency first. Probably some quarterback movement, some quarterback trades and signings, then the draft. But each week I'll be giving you some draft nuggets. Again, this was my top 5 wide receivers. Eventually I'll do a top 5 quarterbacks, top 5 tackles. I'll do top 5 hopefully at every position at some point before the NFL draft comes up, just so you have an idea of what my top 5 are at each position heading in to the NFL draft. That's going to do it for this segment. We're going to take one more short break. On the other side of this short break, I'll be talking about a lot of things NBA. What is going on with the Miami Heat right now? How are they getting back to their winning ways as a 5-game win streak? Could they go back to the finals as currently constructed? What about the Boston Celtics as well? What are the cause of that? Should Danny Ainge's job be on the hot seat this year? And if we have time, we will get to the New York Knicks 17-17 record. I'm not sure if we'll have time for that though. So at least Heat and Celtics talk coming up right after this short break.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red-hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's gsmcpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
All right, and we are back here at the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network for the final segment of today's absolutely packed show. Again, I am your host, Alex Masford. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode and to be continuing to listen to the show. If you're a returning listener, we really do appreciate you. Now, the final thing I want to talk about here is I thought I was going to be able to get to a couple of NBA teams. We're running out of time, so I want to just stick to one NBA team, and that's the Boston Celtics. They are in a current skid where I think they had lost 5 or 6 straight before winning one recently. And a lot of people are floating through who is to blame in the Boston experiment, right? This team has been constructed for a long time now. Brad Stevens, Jaylen Brown, and Jason Tatum have been there forever now. It feels like it's only been about 3-4 years now. And they haven't gotten a championship out of it. And this is where I want to sort of end the episode off for the day, because we're heading into the NFL offseason, and we saw how Tampa Bay won the Super Bowl and everything like that, and I don't mix the cross sports, but there's a few, how do I say this? There's a few certainties in sports. There's only a few of them. One of them, I believe, is aggressive wins. I think as an organization from top down, when you're a general manager and as a coach, being aggressive wins. Aggressive play calls, aggressive trades, aggressive drafts, doing whatever it takes to win at all costs. Being aggressive, being risky, and as I think, because the big risks pay out. It was a risk taking Patrick Mahomes, the Chiefs won the Super Bowl. It was a risk for Tampa Bay to go all in on Tom Brady. They get a Super Bowl out of it. Aggressive wins in sports. Toronto went all in on Kawhi Leonard, got a Super Bowl. He might have left the year after, but they did get an NBA championship out of it. It's worth it, the aggressiveness and things like that. The Boston Celtics have never been aggressive. They have always been considered in one of the team's preferred, all of this language. They've always been in these big-time trades, but they've never landed anybody. They've been too scared to trade away all their draft picks. Danny Ainge has been sort of asset hoarding and refusing to get rid of the Memphis pick, or maybe parting, splitting up Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, or trading Kemba and all of this and yada yada this. But at the end of the day, the only aggressive trade that he made wasn't really that aggressive at all. He got rid of an Isaiah Thomas who was injured and a couple of picks to get a guy in Kyrie Irving who was just a rental, and they didn't get anything out of it. So at the end of the day, Danny Ainge almost could have gotten Kawhi Leonard but didn't want to give up Jaylen Brown. I'm pretty sure could have gotten Anthony Davis but didn't want to give up Jaylen Brown. They were also recently in the James Harden talks. They were in the Joel Embiid talks when he was potentially out of there. Anything with Karl Anthony Towns, they want him, yada yada this. But yet the Celtics don't trade for anybody. So at the end of the day, they end up just running it back with Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, and some dudes. And over the years, that team that was currently constructed a couple of years ago that included Kyrie, Tatum, Brown, Al Horford, Gordon Hayward, that team is now just Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, and a bunch of dudes. And yes, Kemba Walker at this point is just another dude. So can the Celtics win anything? No. Am I surprised that they're out of the playoff race? For sure. But is there a clear-cut way to fix this? I'm not sure. Because now all the great trade assets that Boston has deteriorated. Al Horford's not there anymore. Kemba Walker's not a tradable asset. Who's going to want him at this point of his career when he's playing and putting up numbers like he is the past 2 seasons? Gordon Hayward is gone. They have a trade exception. Who are they going to use it on? Who's available at the deadline they could get? Andre Drummond? Is he going to be a game-changing player for the Boston Celtics? I'm not sure. The team has no depth. The team has no bench. Brad Stevens now is being questioned as a coach, and they're having multiple locker room outbursts after every single game. And at the end of the day, the number one person who deserves the blame for it, in my opinion, is Danny Ainge. He should be the one, if anyone's going to lose a job after this season, if the Celtics season continues to go this way. Again, they can turn it around. The Miami Heat were 13th in the East a week and a half ago. Now they're 5th. The New York Knicks were at the bottom of the East. Now they're, I think, 5th or 6th as well. So at the end of the day, you can turn it around. It's not even the All-Star break. But if this season goes the way that it's looking like it's going to go for the Boston Celtics, the man who should be held responsible is Danny Ainge. He's been there forever. He's been running that team forever. He's outlasted multiple coaching regimes. At the end of the day, he's the one not making the trades and building the roster and really overall just being aggressive enough to try to bring another championship back home to TD Garden. All right, that's going to do it for today's episode of the GSMC Sports Podcast, again brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Before I let you go, don't forget to subscribe to the show, follow us on all social media platforms, and leave us a 5-star review. We would appreciate it if you could do all 3 of those things. Again, I have been your host, Alex Masper. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode, and I will see you all in the next one.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.